Things to learn about. I'm really delighted to be joined by Rhiannon Brandt, who's been the mastermind behind Main Stage. Rhiannon, welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I don't know about the mastermind behind the show. There's a lot of us involved. There's a team here, all socially distanced, of course. We've got the committee. But yeah, we're about to start in probably about 2 hours' time. That's 2:30 Shanghai time, 3:30 Tokyo. This means that we're here now in pitch blackness in Amsterdam at 6:30 in the morning, but that's fine. We have coffee. We've got, you want to hear about today?
I do want to hear about today because I understand that Main Stage is going to be pretty packed with some interesting surprises.
Indeed it is. So we're just a little bit of a teaser. We kick off with the Chief Marketing Officer, Brent Smart of IAG, that's Insurance Australia Group.
They're huge.
He joins in the morning. He's going to talk about the power of insight and has a few comments about data and how much humanity is needed in this time.
Okay.
Then we're going to roll on to looking at research and how that's inspiring innovation within companies. There's a lot very interesting, so that's very cool to watch. Yeah. We're going to then switch to the SMR Foundation. We started yesterday with one of the award winners. Today we have our second one. It's all about diversity. So kind of a theme from the session yesterday and also in the Fringe, which I know you'll talk about shortly.
Absolutely. And the diversity is somehow emerging as one of the big topics of the Insights Festival show.
Indeed. So they're definitely one to watch when we're joined today in the Foundation Award winners. And then we kind of shift gear and go back to brand focus. It's the last kind of chunk on branding. We started on Monday. We've been weaving branding stories throughout. So we have some really nice stories lined up, including one from a research agency who, based on all their insights about what people are looking for in a mask, decided to create and manufacture their own mask. So that's a kind of side spin of an agency. Yeah. So we go through branding through the day, and then we have a little bit of a surprise. We have a second keynote today as well.
Another one?
Yes. So
okay.
What happened is we had a female opening keynote. Yeah. Yesterday we had Deborah joining, the author of Beyond the Red Wall.
It was a really good session, by the way.
I thought it was. Really we had a little glitch with the technology, but we hopefully fixed it. But we'll make sure we can issue that interview live anyway. But the kind of funny thing is we had 2 women already keynotes. The men were complaining a bit, so we brought back 2 today. So there'll be 2 gents. So the concluding session of today, which will be 12:30 in Amsterdam time, 11:30 in UK, will all be from a gentleman who's getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, Richard, 4 o'clock in the morning in Chicago. He'll join us so he can present to you all this morning. So it's busy. So everyone needs coffee. And what else is happening with you? I mean, you're busy with the Fringe or not?
We're busy with the Fringe again. Let me actually invite Finn to talk a little bit about the Fringe because we've been looking at the program. In fact, there's always so much to happen, and I actually have papers that I need for this particular one. But Fringe,
I'll move out the way. Bye-bye, everyone. See you later.
Bye, Rhiannon. Hi, Finn.
Good morning. How are you all?
Goodness, that shirt. I love it.
Yes, loud shirt number 3, festival day number 3. So, and given the fact that we're now working to Asian Pacific and Oceanic time, you'll notice that the brand too, if I can find it somewhere, New Zealand, Auckland. So to suit the region as well. So,
so we've got a really busy program. I believe that we have diversity workshops. We have 2 of them, I believe.
Yes. One of the great teams that came out yesterday. So delighted to see more of it today.
We're going to definitely have plenty of it. Lemons. Do you like lemons?
Lemons. I love lemons.
Okay, because there's going to be a session actually just after this,
Mhm.
which is talking about lemon and how advertising brains become sour. So I think that's going to be an interesting one.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what they say, when God gives you lemons, make lemonade. So,
For those of you who are joining us from APAC, you might be interested in knowing what the state of the world is according to insights from your region. And that's going to be something I'm stopping by in Asia Pacific.
Mhm.
I'm going to be talking to some researchers there to
Yep.
see what is happening. For those of you who aren't joining us right now, but are joining us later, there's also a state of the world, but a global overview. So I've asked some researchers who've done some cross-continental pieces of research to talk to us about, from a global perspective, kind of what's happening, and they're going to be also telling us about
fantastic.
that. Have you participated in the Fast Fringe quiz?
You know what? I was actually there last night, and then of course got called out, said I'd be back, and I never made it back, unfortunately, due to all the other technology things that we were trying to sort out. So no, not yet. So I'm dying to get in on it this evening.
Yeah, because I've been following the chat, and I have to say it was absolutely crazy. Lots of people trying to answer.
Right.
Some people have said it's hard. So, but I think it's a really fun session. I haven't seen that many chats from the Fringe. So definitely, if you haven't participated in it, join. And I hear that there's also even a prize.
Yep. Well, I mean, knowing Crispin and Alex and Paddy, who put it all together, who are our UK representatives, they just put so much time and energy into it. It should be fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to joining it today.
You better. And I'm curious as to whether you will win or if one of the members will upstage you.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will.
There's also, I believe, a huge debate around
sampling. Yes, with JD Deitch and Raymond Wildner. That'll be a really interesting session, actually, because I think we all are questioning, debating, discussing, what the kind of the future of sampling is in the industry, and both the pros and cons of all the different approaches. So that'll definitely be one to watch. And I'm sure we'll have a few of our professional standards people in on that one too. So should be a healthy debate.
Yeah, healthy debate. And I think it's going to be, like you said, I think it's going to be really interesting. So we're not doing it from a boring professional standards, having a guideline perspective. It's going to be really, really dynamic. So definitely join that one. Do you like comedy?
Of course. Hey, look, come on.
Haha to haha. It's another session.
Yeah.
We then have a Bilandi who's organizing a wonderful True Panels workshop at Fringe. I think it's one of our last minute add-ons, but it's one of our best add-ons, I think. So definitely check it out. Bilandi have been working really hard to get this session ready. So come and join us. Do you think user experience and qualitative research are one and the same thing?
They're certainly linked. They may not always be the same thing, because you can also get quantitative user experience stuff. So, but yeah, they're definitely linked.
Because there's a session which is going to be exploring that and talking about whether they're creatures from different planets or not.
Interesting. That should be worth a watch.
I hear that there might be a new GMR coming, and that there might be a session about it.
Yes, indeed. Actually, we have a couple of sessions today, which, if you like, SMR is hosting to a degree. There's the one on the GMR, and for those of you that may have had an opportunity to catch some of the discussion last night that was hosted around the change in the American market, that was kind of a sneak preview about some of the new numbers that are coming out on the GMR. Again, for you guys there, sneak preview again. The market is even bigger than we reported last year by almost $10 billion, believe it or not.
Really? I really missed this 10 billion.
I know. We just kind of found it, on the side of the street. No, but seriously, there's been an enormous amount of work that's gone into redefining the market and getting the measure, well refined. So our own colleague Xavier Palacio is going to be talking to us about that. We've also got two great sessions with our representatives who are, in fairness, who are our muscles, who are our strength, our army around the world. So we'll have a great session with them. And then we've got Brands Connect, if I'm not mistaken, too, right?
We do have Brands Connect, which is a nice little new initiative, which I think Joachim and you are quite proud about, and I think deservedly so.
Well, I mean, it's a lovely kind of concept. It's where it's clients talking to clients about whatever is on top of mind at that particular point in time. But it's a relay race. So this time it's going to be Begonia Fafian from Coca-Cola talking to Estrella from Bacardi, just chatting away. Begonia is going to be doing about 3 of these interviews over the course of the next, I think it's 4 or 6 weeks. And then her last interviewee will become the interviewer. So it's like a relay race going on. So it'll be going on for the next, I guess, certainly the next 12 or 18 weeks and hopefully longer. So catch that. It'll be really worth your while.
And I know that the reps from Romania, from Congo, and
Mhm.
Peru are coming together to talk about diversity, but we hear very much, of course, the North American and the European perspective on these issues. But these reps also wanted to talk a little bit about beyond those two usual suspects, so to speak.
Yes.
So that should be an interesting one as well.
Well, I think it's true, isn't it, that when we talk about diversity, we tend to be very much focused by whatever is topical or what's in the
Yeah.
news. And I think
Yeah.
diversity is such an important topic that it spreads beyond necessarily what happens to be, topical at the moment. So really delighted that that session's being done.
Yeah. Are you ready for physical, face-to-face research? Do you know how to do it safely?
I hope so.
Well, if you don't, or if you're unsure,
Mhm.
like I'm hearing in your voice, there's another session about that as well in the French.
Great.
So that should cover us off and make sure that you're ready for the post-COVID-19 world.
Because we did some guidelines on that, right? We published some
did do a
stuff on it.
guideline.
So
I believe it's published on the
Mhm.
website, strangely enough.
Yep.
And then last but not least, guess who's closing this day again and challenging us to stay up as much as late as possible?
Oh, let me see. Maybe Latin America?
It's Latin America indeed.
Hey, fantastic.
Our Brazilians
good
are
for
back.
them.
They're doing it's the third in their series, and it should be an interesting one as well. I think it's a great moment to practice your Portuguese, and I think I've been seeing the messages whilst I was sleeping, and it's been really dynamic. So I think it's really worthwhile.
Well, a big shout out to both, because last night, of course, it was Mexico and Brazil, but it's been Brazil now. This will be their third night on the run.
Third night on the road.
So big shout out to the Brazilians. Thank you so much. It's really fantastic to have that kind of support structure in behind the festival as well. So looking forward to it. I will be improving my Portuguese, clearly.
So I'm really going to be curious about your shirt for tomorrow, because tomorrow we have the party. We've been working behind the scenes because our DJ, he got COVID-19.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of, it's a risk, unfortunately, these days. So,
but I've been working on it. Our team has been working on it, and we have a DJ who's been working with none other than the Rihanna, not our Rihanna, but the Rihanna.
Right, fantastic.
So,
and David Guetta too, if I'm not mistaken.
David Guetta, Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah.
So we have a big guy coming in, and he's going to be doing something super interactive. So I hope that everyone who's watching joins us for the party. I think it's going to be extraordinary.
Looking forward to it. So, in case you're tired of getting up this early in the morning today, make sure you get some sleep tonight, because that's going to be a cracker.
Perfect. Well, Finn, I think the people want to perhaps join one of the Fringe sessions before main stage begins.
Yes, absolutely. Well, then let's kind of get off and let them do it. So lovely to see you all. Enjoy the day. Thanks for having me on, Kim.
Of course.
And see you guys later on.
Enjoy the Insights Festival, Day 3. Welcome to the Insights Festival show. Great to be back. Next stop of our show is in the Asia Pacific region. And I am really delighted to be welcoming three fantastic researchers and research companies which have been conducting some amazing research into the states of the world according to Asia. I'm really pleased to be joined by Neil, by Troy, and Rajesh, who are going to be talking to us a little bit about the Asia Pacific continent and what's happening on the region and kind of what the foresight is for the region. So just great to have these three guys with us. I just want to say as well a huge thanks to NetQuest, who is sponsoring the Insights Festival Fringe and is making this possible for us to beam this to you live on Facebook, on YouTube, and for festival goers on your platform. Neil, Troy, Rajesh, welcome to the show. Perhaps before we begin, I would like to ask each and every one of you to introduce yourselves and to talk a little bit about what you've been conducting in terms of research. Neil, would you like to get us started?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Neil Cantor, and I work at Rakuten Insights. Rakuten is a part of a group company which is basically like Amazon in Japan, but we've been operating our proprietary panels across Asia for the last 2 decades. Prior to Rakuten Insight, I've been working in other Japanese companies, client-side research roles and agency research roles as well.
Thanks, Neil.
The kinds of research we've been conducting, we've been on using our panels across Asia, so largely across APAC, we've been running our internal surveys, and so I'll be talking about the findings from those.
Welcome, Neil, to the show. And Troy, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So I'm Troy Kohut. I'm the CEO at Play Market Research here in Sydney, Australia. And we're a consumer research sort of company where we do insights-led innovation. So we work with all of the local and multinational FMCGs, service providers, finance. And what we do is we really go out and we talk to consumers about products they use, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve. My background is a little bit varied. I've been doing this for about 25 years across 7 or 8 countries now, half of them in the Asia Pacific region and then North America as well. I've been in Australia since 2001.
Thank you, Troy, and welcome to the show. And last but certainly not least, Rajesh, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're coming from?
Sure. So my name is Rajesh Mishra, and I'm the founder of Thinking Hats. Thinking Hats was born in 2011. And before that, I was into research. I have spent my 20 years into this research companies, in a different research companies. And right now, we started with qualitative research in 2011, and now we are into quantitative research too. And we have around 100 brands who have worked with us in last 11 years, more than 100 brands. And we have developed many products for media, for FMCG and many other players in the market. And we are still working well. And during this pandemic, we have done a lot of digital works as market didn't allow us to go to face-to-face. Still, India is doing a face-to-face, but we did more of digital interviews and more on the app-based interviews. So that's what about Thinking Hats and me.
And just in case you don't know what the acronym stands for, FMCG stands for Fast Moving Consumer Goods. And clearly, Troy and Rajesh both have a bit of experience and will be telling us a little bit more about that in the show. So we're looking really forward to that. Neil, Troy, and Rajesh, their companies have been contributing to a platform we're calling the Research Eureka for COVID-19. Over 150 findings from research companies around the world have been generously given to the general public in order to inform you about how the world is actually been impacted by COVID-19 and how governments, businesses, and indeed people can anticipate the future. So Neil, Troy, and Rajesh, again, a huge thanks for contributing to that platform. It's been great having your contributions in there. Let's jump straight into the meat of the session. And essentially, I want to ask each of you to talk to us a little bit about the research that you have been conducting and to kind of explain to us, how does that explain the situation in Asia Pacific? Neil, would you like to get us started and kind of explain to us kind of what your research is unveiling about the Asia Pacific region today?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'll start off by saying we saw initially as the COVID impact first started taking place, we saw a lot of surveys come through our panels assessing the initial impact and how it from many different angles, as our clients would come from many different sectors or categories. However, I think that's kind of changed slightly now as the initial impact has gone past, and we're all starting to get used to the world with COVID. And actually, what we're seeing now is a lot more surveys, essentially understanding consumer needs and behaviours and their attitudes in light of COVID. But in a way, also going back to the heart of what market research is about, and understanding the consumer in their own life and their own culture. Yes, COVID is part of that now, but I think we're sort of starting to see a change where we're understanding the consumer in APAC in their current lifestyle, as opposed to just focusing on the COVID so much. And I think what that's giving us is a lot of different angles and a lot of different themes are arising from the research as we are finding now.
Thanks, Niels. And Rajesh, I want to kind of bring you into the conversation on this point. I know that India is potentially a little bit at a different pace with regards to kind of COVID-19 and that type of thing. Do you see that impacting kind of the research you've conducted, or would you say that the story is very similar to what Neil has just described?
Yeah, so we are seeing the different themes here also, and we have seen in different categories, and we were continue doing in the research, continuously doing on the apps and on the digital networks during the COVID also, and we found a lot of different themes. Like we found out in FMC, the breakfast, the snacks category, if you'll see, people were having in the night, there was a fifth food. The fifth food which has come was in the night at a 2 o'clock in AM, 2 a.m. So that was the main thing of, people were not sleeping and they were just munching something to eat. So this was the one snack time developed during 2 a.m. Normally people used to sleep before COVID. So this was a development what we have seen in the post-COVID. So that is what we have found in the COVID period, and we were continually doing and researching the things in April, May, and June, and we got a lot of different themes in that. And mobile has become a main research. In India, there were a lot of face-to-face interviews were happening, but client have started moving towards mobile and apps and other stuffs, which is like a link interviews or something. But the point to bring is that COVID has changed the scenario to little bit, to going through a mobile or mobile apps, or going to more technology savvy research rather than being a very traditional research. So which the percentage has moved very fast. The percentage which was moving, it has moved very fast now because of the COVID, and a lot of changes we have seen in the market.
Thanks, Rajesh. And I mean, Troy, from your research, are you seeing also similar kind of reactions, or are the themes that you're also uncovering, are there additional themes or things different which the research is unveiling? Because I think you're, of course, in a very different market as well.
Yeah, so the Australian market is decidedly different than most others in Asia Pacific. And we've come off the back, before we moved into the challenge with COVID. Unfortunately, Australia has been actually really quite fortunate. We've had some significant challenges in Victoria and in Melbourne in the last couple of months. But for the most part, Australia hasn't taken the brunt of the disease the way other countries have. But for consumers here, we moved into COVID off of the back of a very, very significant drought, then a horrific bushfire season. So we had a lot of consumers who were already a little bit fatigued with all of the challenges that we were seeing in the marketplace. So we began with COVID. We were fairly early to the market, working with our own panel. We started doing surveying of our own panel every week back in February to watch what's been going on. We've seen some really key trends happening around the shift towards wanting to buy things that are more local. Both because we want to support the local economy, but there's also this perception that they're safer. The idea that we need to be a little bit thriftier, we need to be a little bit more cautious with money these days, especially, Australia officially moved into recession this week for the first time in 3 decades. So there's a lot of those things that are impacting the market. We do see a very dynamic consumer market despite all of that, but it's not an organic dynamism. It's very much driven by circumstances that are beyond people's or businesses or government's control. It's very reactive. I remember back in March in particular, grocery store shelves were empty in Australia. That was unheard of. Now, what it did do is it led to this idea that people tried a lot of new products and brands they never would have tried before because they didn't have any choice. There was nothing else on the shelf. And what that's done is sort of forced our clients to look at how do we deal with the now rather than planning longer term. What we've been encouraging clients to do is forget about what normal was, forget about pre-COVID. That's gone, that's done. Because a lot of consumers are still thinking about return to normal. And I keep telling clients, the normal that they want to return to is an idealized normal that never actually existed. We need to now start planning for what is going to come next. What life is going to be in 2021 and 2022.
Neil, Rajesh, I think you were all quite big.
I think I just want to add, I think it's really, really important about the understanding consumers as they are now, and that's kind of what I was saying, especially from our point of view in being based in Europe and based in London myself, is we have to look through the frame of reference for the people in APAC, so the APAC consumers. So we often work with our partners because it's very important to have that local insight that understand the culture from presence and from a deeper understanding of the background of the culture. So we think that's very important. So we work closely with local managers to help us with that. And that's one of the points where I think Troy mentioned localism. That was a big theme of ours as well. And it's important to look through the local culture view of what that means. Because I think in the UK, we've had some aspects of localism and supporting the community, like we've been having a clap for the health system or starting to get to know our neighbours at that moment, or eat out to help out. But what we're seeing is a stronger kind of support the community and a stronger kind of we mentality in some parts of Asia, especially India. So perhaps Rajesh can explain more about that. But we've definitely seen that support the local community, support mum and pa shops, and maybe more localized online shopping as well to prevent the safer kind of deliveries from overseas.
Rajesh, anything to add?
Yeah, so the race for basically what I am saying, that localized and all, the race for better, faster, and cheaper continues to be at a demanding space now. Every client want better, faster, and cheaper, and they want the end of the product or research to be done very quickly, and they want to take the action on it. So the research is completely moving from that phase that where we used to get a month to research. Now they want in 10 days, 15 days a report. So there is a completely change. This is also because we are more going towards a local. We are also looking towards more category driven, more towards understanding the people quickly so that they can action it fast. And research is changing in that manner.
I wanted to your conversation provokes a question for me with regards to kind of people's reactions, in particular, I guess the emotional reaction. Do you find that are we still kind of in this kind of COVID-19, how should I say, this COVID-19 panic and this COVID-19 fear in Asia Pacific, or would you say actually, because we're talking, as you're mentioning, that we're moving to a normal, whatever, and I wouldn't call it a new normal, but there is a new reality in essence that we have to anticipate. Are you finding that the Asia Pacific region and the consumers and the people in the region have accepted that, and therefore there's new optimism, or would you say it's something very different that you're actually seeing through your research?
First, I'm glad that you avoided the new normal, because it's a phrase that new does not make it normal. New makes it new. But you're right. It's a new reality that we're facing. Here in Australia, I have a team in the Philippines. I deal with clients in Singapore and in Hong Kong and Taiwan. I think what we're really beginning to see, there was that original, yes, let's come together, let's do what we need to do. But that was 6 months ago or more, depending where you are. What we're really seeing now across our research is lockdown fatigue. People are tired of it. And we're seeing sort of the spectrum is diversifying. We're getting those who are hyper vigilant. They avoid public transit. They have the mask on all the time. They try not to go out to public places. They're not coming into the office. Then there's the other extreme, which is, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm just going to get on with my life. And I think a lot of that depends across the consumer spectrum, how much the changes that have been put in place, the restrictions on movement, the restrictions on what you can go and actually do, have impacted what your original sort of routine was. For me, quite frankly, it didn't actually have a huge impact. I don't have kids. I don't commute by train. And we have a small office where we can socially distance and all still work in the same place. The changes that we've seen are, we don't have focus groups in the office. We do a lot of sensory work. We don't do that in the office at the moment. We do all in-home testing and things like that. So there've been some changes that way, but what we're really seeing is that fatigue over the whole issue. Now, fortunately in Australia, in New Zealand, it's not as extreme as we're seeing in places like the United States at the moment, but it is a problem.
I mean, Rajesh, you guys are working very different, right?
I think from our point of view, I think we had some surveys at the beginning which did show that initial panic, if you like. So I remember some examples where, based in the UK, we thought it was a bit strange to start spending money at the beginning of the outbreak, but there were some countries in APAC, such as Indonesia, where they were buying a lot of vehicles because they were thinking about avoiding public transports. So they were actually making kind of these purchases which seemed out of sync with some other areas of the world. But I think now we're sort of starting to go into we're seeing much more from the research that consumers, sort of going back to basics in a way, but look, consumers are after the smoother, faster, better experience, say on the mobile and the retail. In more developed markets, again, those basic functions are expected, and have high expectations on the basic functions and the hygiene factors. And then so we're sort of going back to really understanding what they want and what benefit we can add them in their life.
Which that gels really well with what you were saying before, right? With regards to that shift to mobile and the digital world.
Yeah. So by now, most people alive know what is coronavirus in India and how to fight against coronavirus right now. Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, Okay. So by now, most people know what is coronavirus and how it has infected nearly every continent. And they are quite aware that things has to be changed and has to be move on. And people have started doing that in India and most places in the countries, different countries. So yeah, research has started. We have started getting research, and people have started giving the interviews, but more on the mobile apps or more on the home test or something like that. But the group discussion we are doing more digitally now. So we don't call 8 people together where it used to be. But some of the places, some of the cities in India have started that group discussion also, where the numbers are lesser. I mean, the COVID patients are lesser as compared to the other cities. So few places we have started it, and consumer have started knowing that we can fight against this COVID-19, and they know what is COVID-19. The most important thing is that at the beginning, March and April, when it started in India, people were not aware what is COVID, and people were just stressed about that, and they were not coming out. But now you will find traffic in Bombay or any cities of the India, and people have moved on now because they know now. And slowly things have started moving to the new normal, or you can say normal.
Yeah, so trying to avoid this new normal concept. I want to shift gears maybe a little bit. beyond COVID-19, if that's possible. And kind of, so Troy mentioned this as well, kind of, so we're now moving rather from very, very long-term planning to much more short-term planning. It's a bit more reactive. It's a bit more in the moment kind of planning. And I'd be curious to kind of hear from you guys in terms of how should leaders, whether they be political leaders or business leaders or civil society leaders, how should they be anticipating kind of moving forward based on what you're seeing in your research? Neil, do you want to jump in?
How about leaders, say business leaders? I think a good example, I kind of go back to a good example as using the sort of understanding the shopping experience that consumers would want if you're a business leader. And I think something we've seen across the world, it would be a rise in e-commerce. Everybody would understand that people are more at home, more online shopping, safer, easier, quicker. But I think there's a perspective from Europe somehow where you can apply the European mindset onto APAC, and you might miss entirely what that kind of e-commerce means in places like China, Hong Kong, Singapore, where e-commerce is much more about m-commerce and mobile commerce. And actually what consumers are after is this seamless online experience, yes, but not the typical English experience of online at home, buying online, but it's more about going to shop with your mobile and having a seamless online, offline experience. So maybe using an app which tells you which department stores are crowded, which are not, which products are in stock, which are not, and helping the consumer then navigate the physical world with the online world. And that's an example of how, I feel like business leaders particularly, and maybe brand leaders should apply the local frame of reference. As it's very easy to think, okay, e-commerce and have an image of what you should do to provide a good customer experience, but actually that misses entirely what consumers are really on now and what the new now is for switched on consumers, especially maybe millennials, Gen Z, but even switched on consumers in Hong Kong, China will be looking for that seamless mobile e-commerce physical world. And I think business leaders, but also other leaders, to understand, to not just apply their own frame of reference onto these topics and issues. And be
really
open to a different way of looking at the world, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. I don't know if it's
No, I think so, and I think it really ties into what Troy was saying about localism as well. I think it's kind of, there's a spectrum of that it's not just they're looking for local products, but also the experience has to be adapted to what the local expectations are. Troy, I don't know if you want to jump in on that or kind of on the previous question.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with Neil. There is that need to adapt circumstances to what's going on locally, and it's a little bit different here in Australia because we to an extent, we don't have the densities, we don't have the number of people that some of that places like Singapore or Hong Kong would have to deal with. But there's also a different expectation in Australia about what localism means. And as a result of that, what we're seeing is a growing push for the repatriation of manufacturing, for example. There's a growing distrust of imported products, especially in the food category. Most Australians probably don't realize that there isn't that much that's actually imported. We send a lot more out than we bring in. But there is that growing push. But I think beyond just the consumer aspect to this, I think business leaders, government leaders as well, making decisions need to begin to understand and accept that there's going to be a significant change in things like the way we work. I'm not expecting that this trend to working at home is going to reverse itself. We're going to find sort of a much greater mix of office work versus working at home in the future. A lot of companies that have been resistant to it in the past have forced to understand that it can actually work. So that has implications for how much office space a company needs. How many people are on the trains every day? How many people are in cars every day? The same thing I think is going to apply to education. All of that is going to impact everyday life, and it's going to impact the planning both for business and for government in how we move forward. it's something that millennials have kind of been pushing for a while, is that flexibility and that freedom to work where and when they want, as long as they deliver the outcome the business needs. I think what COVID has done in a lot of markets, especially in some of the developed markets, is really force businesses to accept that, hey, that can work. And if I look at major employers here in Australia, setting Victoria aside, where nobody's allowed to go more than 5 kilometers from their own home, here in Sydney, most of my major clients, I look at companies like Nestle. They're not working in their offices. They're allowed to go to their office, but they're encouraged not to. And there's going to have to be some flexibility in that moving forward that never existed before.
And I think there's some cultures where that presents more of a challenge. So, for example, in Japan, where Rakuten's based, there's a strong culture of working in the office, just with traditions such as showing your face, being present, using the physical stamps to approve, and the kind of social aspect of that as well. So it's nothing short of a revolution in some markets like Japan. And actually, it's changing completely. For example, so they're actually having meetings probably all day and then socializing online in the evening. So in some ways, the culture hasn't changed, but in some ways, there's huge changes in life which business leaders and government leaders would need to tackle.
Rajesh, you have to tell me how it's changing in India, because I know that that's such a different culture.
Yeah, India is very different in terms of that. Asia Pacific leader must have to take the action and move forward, because crisis is there. We are currently experiencing everywhere the crisis and all. And however, whatever the stake is, we have to take action and move forward. We can't wait for that. Second thing is very important, what Troy was trying to say, the keeping up with the legislation in India. Every day, every time, in every city, there is something, the government is releasing some new regulations every day. Now, in order to understand that regulation, whether we should start the research or not start the research, we have to keep a tap on the legislation and understand what they are trying to say and how we can overcome this and do our own business in a different way. So in India, everywhere it is not open. So India is very vast. So if you'll see, Bombay is open, so Delhi is not open, or some other places are open and some other not. But the main thing is to keep a tab on the legislation and change your decisions or change your way of interacting with this, for doing the research. And the most important is the dealing with the information which is overload right now. If you'll see everywhere, the covid information is so overload, people don't understand where to take the information from, whether this information is right or not. So a leader need to understand whether the information what you're taking is right or wrong, and if that information is coming to you, are you overloaded with those information, whether you want to pay attention on those information. So these are the 3-4 things. Also selecting the right focus. So what happened normally in India, dealing with the many concerns right now, we are all dealing with the many concerns right now. So our first priority is to select the focus, whether I want to go in this business or not. Like, for example, India was dealing, before that there was a lot of face-to-face interviews and all. Now COVID has suddenly changed it, whether I want to remain in face-to-face or I have to move to mobile or I have to move to something else. So that's what we have to take the decision, and selecting the right focus right now for a future, that the leader has to pay attention on that. So these are the 3-4 things a leader need to make sure in India to do a business, and pay attention on what he can do to make sure that he is there in the business for longer time.
Thanks, Rajesh. I wanted to kind of ask you guys the question of, I think what you raised kind of highlights the question around kind of trust, kind of the trust in information sources, trusting government and trusting government actions as part of the kind of an effective, both kind of reacting COVID-19 from the sanitary perspective, but also very soon it'll be around the economic recovery. Are you finding that in Asia Pacific that people feel reassured with what's been happening in terms of government measures, the health measures and those types of things, and that therefore they're kind of prepared for a recovery scenario? Or would you say that there's actually, there are learnings to be taken from how it's been done so far, and particularly if we're moving into a fatigue situation of how messaging has to be adapted either from brands or from business leaders to kind of get us over over the hump, in essence?
I think what we're seeing we're seeing a mixed picture, I think, in terms of sort of trust of different sources of information across APAC. So there was some, for example, key opinion leaders or maybe influencers online. This as a source wasn't really accepted so well in more developed markets such as Japan or Korea. However, where in those markets they were very much looking towards the government and sort of traditional news streams for their information which they could trust. Whereas I think in other markets actually there's been a sort of stronger pull to get trusting information online, social media in some parts of Southeast Asia, for example, where social media has played a more important role in bringing everyone together and actually people trusting the information from there. So we're seeing a kind of mixed picture, I think, across the APAC region. Japan was a bit of an anomaly where they have a high concern about private data being misused or personal data being misused, but they kind of trust everyone to look after them. Basically, they trust the government and they trust the companies to look after their personal data and on their behalf. So sometimes, and that's a good example where initially we saw the data in Japan and thought that there was a problem with the data, but actually in their frame of reference it made complete sense. But in terms of trusting source and how trusting information, how business leaders need to give that, I think it does depend on the market, on the region.
Yeah.
Troy, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, so I would agree with Neil that it really does depend on the marketplace and sort of the role that the government and the media generally play in some of those countries is very different than it is in Japan or here in Australia. Here in Australia, initially there was a great deal of trust and faith in what the government was saying. The mainstream media pretty much stuck to what the script was. And coming off the back of things like the bushfire season that we had, where there were some very specific media outlets that were the most trusted, they've carried on with that. But as this continues on, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, the voices that started off as being very fringe are getting louder, and they're getting a larger audience because because they have, in some cases, more time. And they're at home, they're less isolated from various views in some cases. They're tending to gravitate towards things that can be a little bit more extreme. And that can be problematic. That's where we're seeing sort of, it's still modest here in Australia, but increasing numbers of protests over things like masks and stay-at-home orders. And I think that can be really problematic. And in other markets, other countries where the government doesn't share the same level of trust. And in Australia, we've actually seen trust in government go up during all of this, where that same level of trust isn't shared, or where the sort of society is more polarized. It can be really, really problematic.
That's true. So in India, it is different. In a different state has a different chief minister, we call as a CM of the country. India, in each state, we have different chief ministers. So where every state has a different view of their chief ministers. But the prime minister is one where people believe more, and he has been the right person to trust. And whenever he comes, people believe him more, and the way they deal with it, the way the central government, what I'm talking about, they trust on them. The trust is there in India with the central government. However, the state government, it varies from different states. So again, it depends on the different state, how people are reacting to the chief minister or their faith on the government over in that state. So at the end, one way to choose or to consider is truly important for our business is for most of us is to prioritize our people first. When I say people is like our employees, our customers, our vendors, our partners, whether they are safe or not. If we pay attention on that and then conduct a business, we will have a win-win situation over a period of time. So yeah, government is there. They will lead a lot of legislation will be there. A lot of legislation will change, but we have to ensure that these 3-4 things people are very important for us. We should ensure their safety and then do the business on it. So that's what we, as a Thinking Hats, also and other companies also are doing the same.
I think that's a really good point, Rajesh, because even here in Australia, where I have teams in different states. If I look at what I have to do for my team that's in Melbourne is very different than what I need to do for my team in Sydney.
Right.
In Melbourne, because they have to work from home. They're very limited. The kids are at home. We've had to be much more flexible to ensure that they can balance their day-to-day home needs and life needs with what the business requires at the same time. And I think that because of that diversity, it is really important for anybody in business who leads and supports a group of people to be really conscious that right now needs are very, very different, not just from geography to geography, but individual circumstance to individual circumstance.
True.
I want to ask you guys in terms of, so we talked a lot about localism, we talked a bit about the reaction to COVID-19 and those types of things, but are there things that you would say are themes which might be very specific to the Asia-Pacific region, which you might find quite poignant, or at least, which might not be the things that you would be aware of, but which you would say, if you're a decision maker, thinking about either entering the market or making decisions about the market, what are the kind of things that you would say these are things which are really emerging and which are really contrasting, which you find really interesting from your research?
Yeah,
I think you're nodding.
yeah, I think that's an important theme, which is definitely on leaders' minds, but should be forefront is the sustainability and the kind of eco-friendly approach. I think we've found some really interesting research through the last few months, and it's definitely something again that the leaders need to take a local approach to, because it's certain to say that sustainability is as important as ever for the Asian consumer. There's some really nice example of brands, say in Singapore, which are promoting very sustainable products, beauty products. However, there's also some markets in APAC where we saw things which were quite surprising from an English point of view. So single-use plastics, for example, went through the roof in some markets in APAC. And when we were finding out why, essentially we found out it's due to hygiene reasons. So it's much safer. So primarily during the COVID times, yes, everybody was more eco-conscious, wanted to look after their local environments, particularly. Because there was they rediscovered the importance of the environment in their local nature, maybe the parks, the beaches, the woodlands, the oceans. But at the same time, there was this challenge for consumers who were putting their own health first and actually using single-use plastics, where in the UK, this was something which we didn't really see actually. So I think some of these themes it's obviously on business leaders' minds, the environment and sustainability, but I think it's very important during these times and how consumers in their different regions react to the issue of sustainability.
Thanks, Nils. Rajesh, in India, is there something that we might not be aware of that's emerging?
In terms of emerging, yeah, what Neil said, that the plastic or the sustainability has started moving and people have started looking after that. And also we need to understand that this is a forced mindset change was playing encouraging the organization to rethink ways of working. Like if you'll see, all of a sudden we have gone from a working in conference rooms to working in a living room. So this change, which will help to basically reduce the pollution, which we were traveling along the way for 2 hours or 1 hour, the pollution has gone down. The environmental things have started coming. Like people have started thinking about why to travel all the way if we can work from home. So hence reducing the pollution. So the thought has started inculcated in their mind right now, and people have started moving, and this will be the future. People will work from home. People will have a separate room to work for a home. People who are staying in 1 bedroom hall kitchen or 2 BHK today, 2 bedroom hall, they will buy a 3 BHK, and they will have one office in that room. So that change you will see over a future of time, which we have started looking now. People have started moving from 2 BHK to 3 BHK. So that's the scenario right now going on in the Indian market. So yes, sustainability, your pollution-free, environmental, all these things, people have started thinking on it now, and this will really help us in the future.
You see, that whole focus on the environment here, of course, it began before COVID because of things like the drought and the bushfire season, but it's just continued to extend it. And we did see, Neil, here in Australia, a rapid increase in sort of single-use plastics and things like that. For hygiene, for instance, you know, my local coffee shop for quite a while, I couldn't take my own cup in. They wouldn't take it. Now that's beginning to sort of change. But that focus on the environment here is also tied to an increased focus on health. You know, the healthy environment lets you get out and be about in it much more, which is good for the body. The other trend that we've seen here in Australia is a renewed focus on your home, partly because we're spending a lot more time in them. You know, a lot more do-it-yourself projects around home, a lot more cooking at home, which is of course changing the way you shop for grocery. A lot less takeaway food. So those kinds of things are also changing. And you know, some of the surveys ask people, you know, all of these changes that you've made during COVID, cooking more at home, what have you. Do you expect that to stay the case as things sort of progress? And I'm really surprised by a lot of people who I'm not surprised that a lot of people say yes. But when I ask them about the reasons why, it's because there is that expectation that I'll be able to work at home more in the future and I'll have more flexibility around timing and things. So it's not specifically just because I'm at home at the moment, but it's because other things have changed that give me the flexibility to do that. And there's the hope longer term that some of that flexibility will remain.
We saw that really strongly in Malaysia, which it seemed to fit in with the local culture of, and it's an opportunity to improve oneself, maybe learn new skills at home, educate, use, exactly as Troy says, use that flexibility to make oneself a better person, both for yourself, your family, but also for the community. And we saw that really fit strongly with the Malaysian culture, which is really a very bright, optimistic point of view in these kind of uncertain times.
Absolutely. I mean, here,
I wish we had more time to explore all these themes, because I think it's been an interesting journey into Asia Pacific. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but I hope that for those who are watching the show, you've had a little glimpse into the richness and the depth of research that's been undertaken in the Asia Pacific region, and also the complexities of working in a region with so many different countries, so many different cultures, so many different reactions to it. Neil, Troy, Rajesh, I want to just give you one final opportunity to just share with us, you know, from your perspective, from your research, would you say the future outlook for the region is good, or are there things that you would say we should be watching out for?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, as kind of final comment, I think these uncertain times definitely challenges for many people. But what we're finding through our research, if we go across categories, there's certainly areas of huge potential, and as people emerge, and I think it's really the right time to understand their lifestyle, what's relevant to them now, and to think about with the offer for brands, to think about the offers they give them in terms of what they're providing as benefits and being relevant for them in their lifestyle and culture.
Troy, final remarks?
Yeah, so in Australia, what we're seeing is, you know, it's a very positive attitude moving forward. But there's also a realistic expectation that, you know, this can happen again, and we need to work together to ensure that not just in Australia, but across the region, we're putting in place the processes, the systems, the infrastructure. And it's not just government, it's businesses, it's companies, it's brands as well, to ensure that when it does come the next time, when something else happens, they were actually much better prepared to respond in a way that is very positive and addresses this much more quickly.
And
so in India, Kim, you were saying something.
I'm just going to say, go ahead, Rajesh.
So in India, okay. So in India also it's the same thing. You know, people have become more positive and people have started moving ahead, and people know now what is COVID-19. As I said before, people are aware now. It was that people were not aware, hence they were getting, and the anxieties were there, the fear was there. they have moved on. Even the government knows how to tackle now. So every country knows now what should be done when this scenario happens in the future. So they will be more prepared, and people will be more prepared, and people know how to interact with each other now. So the distancing is there, followed by most of the people here. However, people are not used to the mask and all in India, but yeah, they will get used to it over a period of time.
Thank you guys for your words. For those of you who have watched, I hope that you found this exchange with these wonderful experts, Neil, Troy, and Rajesh, interesting and enlightening. If you're interested in more insights, if you're interested in finding out more about what research is unveiling around the world and explaining about our state of the world, then do join us for the Insights Festival. It is taking place 14th to the 17th of September. You can still register at smr.org, and we hope to see you there. Neil, Troy, Rajesh, thank you so much for your time. And join us again for the next stop. We have other countries and other regions where we're going to be exploring what the state of the world is from that region's perspective. Thank you so much for joining the show. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you,
and Rajesh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Game.